Can everybody say hi to the students watching this at home or at ninth period? All right, so let's start our lecture on why did Europe want to explore foreign lands? All right, so we went over this yesterday, but I'll review it again. There are three reasons why Europe decided to, or why people in Europe went off to explore foreign lands. Before we get to those three reasons, though, let me ask you guys a question. Why would someone leave their homeland? Go ahead, unnamed student in the back.
To get more resources.
Yes, to get more resources. Go ahead.
A better life.
A better life. Excellent. Anybody else? Go ahead. To explore new things, possibly adventure, see something new. Anybody else? All right, let's move ahead. So I'm going to go over again with you the three main reasons why people in Europe, why they leave Europe and want to explore other lands. So number one, like you guys said, they are looking for basic resources. People in Europe are looking for basic resources. Also, they are looking for cash crops. This is a big thing because, yes, Europe does have some resources. It doesn't have anything that's going to get, it doesn't have as many things that get you rich like gold, but it does have resources, but people are looking elsewhere to get more resources, to basically to make themselves rich. There are some people who want to leave, get resources, and bring them back. Number two, establish new trade routes to Asian markets. So, we knew that the Europeans, especially the upper class, had developed a taste for spices. They wanted silks that were from China. They wanted cotton that came from India. So many of the goods they wanted to get were in Asia. However, who was controlling the trade? If they wanted to get goods from Asia, who did they have to go through? Yeah, the Muslims who were in the Middle East. And the Muslims controlled a lot of the trade that was on the Silk Road just because of their location. So they controlled a lot of the trade. So for the Christians in Europe, I'll talk loud since I'm going to the map back here. So for the Christians in Europe, they wanted to get to Asia, but they couldn't go through the Muslim region, so they would have to go around, and that would take them to, what continent did they have to get around? Yep, they would have to get around Africa. So that will lead them to Africa. And what's going to happen is we're going to see the two main powers of this time, Spain and Portugal, they start exploring into Africa because they want to get to Asia. So they want to get to Asia, and this leads the Europeans to try to travel around Africa to get there. Along the way, when they get to Africa, they discover a lot of resources. Gold. How do we know there was gold in West Africa? Yeah, the empires, Mali, Songhai, Ghana, we knew they had gold. So when Europe gets there, there's gold that they can get. There's ivory from elephant tusks. And also there will be slavery. Europeans buy slaves from the Africans. Now the slave trade existed in Africa, and it existed for a long time. However, the slave trade was very different. The Africans had a different point of view of the slave trade. They believed that a slave should be like in Rome, where someone was defeated in battle, they could be a slave. Someone who was in debt could be a slave. Or the Europeans, when they would take an African as a slave, it was just an African they saw as. And this was someone who would be a slave, and their kids would be slaves. And this would cause slavery for 400 years. So that leads mainly the Portuguese and the Spanish to Africa. So reason number one, they want resources. Number two, they want to get these resources from Asia, and that leads the Europeans to start trying to go around Africa, and they start trading with African wealth, getting resources from Africa. And number three would be, there was a desire to expand the influence of Christianity, or to spread Christianity. Now at this time, the Crusades, they're done. The Crusades are over. We have the pictures of the Crusaders right here, but the Crusades are done. However, is the idea of the Crusades completely gone? Is the idea of spreading Christianity gone? No. We will see all over Europe there's this idea that they need to spread the religion of Christianity, that they're right and they have to spread Christianity. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Europeans also believe, though, as they start traveling to places like Africa, as they start traveling to places like the Americas and Asia, they believe as they're profiting, as they're getting money from trade, as they're getting money from literally just stealing the resources in many cases, they believe as they're conquering, making money, they believe this is because, many of them, that they are Christians and that God's on their side. Many of the Europeans are like, well, the reason why we're able to take things over and we're able to spread so far is because of our religion. God's on our side, and God wants that to happen. That becomes a common belief for many of the Europeans at this time. That, well, when they got to the Americas, the natives started dying. That must be because God wanted them to, and He wanted us to expand. It becomes a mindset of many Europeans in this age. So, they take the expansion of faith and they connect that with military glory and economic profit. That because their faith was expanding, they were profiting, and that they were getting military victories because of that. Portugal and Spain. Let's go back. Because Portugal and Spain, I'm going to mention them over and over and over again. So Portugal and Spain, what happens to them? What religion was practiced in Portugal and Spain for about 700 years? What empire was it a part of? It was part of the Muslim Empire. So in Portugal and Spain, they defeat the Muslims. They're able to basically kick them out of their country after a while. And they're able to defeat them. And they are Christians, but they are what happens is because they've been fighting the Muslims for so long, they are very anti-Muslim, and it becomes kind of a battle of Christians versus Muslims at this point. And because of the Crusades and everything, they want to spread the religion even further. All right, well, let's continue this. On with this during the 14th and 15th centuries. Now, when I say like 14th century, what am I referring to? That'd be like the 1300s. 15th century is the 1400s. So during the 14th and 15th centuries, there became a new demand for many, many products from Asia, like cotton cloths from India, silk from China, exotic precious stones from India, from Tibet, all kinds of spices like pepper, cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, cloves. And at first, the Italian merchants are the ones to get themselves rich out of this. But then it spreads to Spain, Portugal, are also able to get rich. Now, the Portuguese, for example, they're the first ones to branch out from Portugal. And as they branch out, they get to Africa, and they get to the area today we'd call Sierra Leone in about 1460. So Sierra Leone, they get there around 1460. And shortly after, we'll see the beginning of the slave trade will start. We'll see the trade for gold, ivory, and other materials in Africa. So again, if you look back at the map on here, Portugal, if you don't know where it is this tiny little country on the western end of Spain. It's not that big at all. Portugal is like right there. So, famous for making cork and soccer forwards. So they travel, they go this way, and basically they get into the interior of Africa, and they're trying to get around Africa, but what they realize is this continent is actually really huge. But at the same time, what happens is they advance in their knowledge of sailing, they gain more trade, and they become richer because of trade with African countries. All right, let's talk about one person in particular who you need to know about, and that's Prince Henry the Navigator. Prince Henry the Navigator. Prince Henry the Navigator was really a good symbol for Europe, especially Spain and Portugal in this time. Prince Henry the Navigator was royalty. He was a prince. He was royalty in Portugal. However, he was not in line to become king. So he wasn't going to become king. So he couldn't be king, but he wanted to build another empire. He wanted to build a commercial empire, which means trading of goods, going out and getting goods from other lands. And he also wanted to spread Christianity. So Prince Henry the Navigator, what he did was he started what was called the Order of Christ in Portugal. And he led expeditions down the west coast of Africa. He was basically a navigator, like a cartographer. He studied geography, he studied science, and he was able to fundraise and get the money, much of it from the government of Portugal, to start these expeditions into Africa to bring things back. And they're not profitable at first. They're not making a lot of money for quite a while. But he's able to think that, long term, that this could bring a lot of riches to the country of Portugal. And along with that, he wants to spread Christianity as he's going. And what this does is he basically funds a lot of sailors to begin exploring out to Africa. It causes a lot of excitement. A lot of people want to keep doing this. And it spreads Portugal and Spain to other countries throughout Europe. All right. All right, so the next part we're going to look at is the technological advances that lead to exploration. So the technological advances that lead to exploration. So by the 15th century, there are many achievements in maritime technology and many innovations. Now, when I say maritime pretty much means by the sea. It should be easy for you guys because what are the first three letters? All right, there you go. Maritime means basically by the sea. So, there are a lot of technology that leads to long-range or international trade that's going to develop over many, many nations and continents. Basically, Portugal and Spain are going to reach, through both trade, colonization, they're going to reach the Americas, both North and South, Africa, Asia, all the way to China, is where the reach will go for the Portuguese and the Spanish. So, they dominate trade in Africa, and they start basically forming navigational charts, or atlases or maps. They start forming navigational charts, atlases, and maps. One place where this takes place is in Spain, and it'd be called, I'll probably say this wrong, but Palma de... I think that'd be Palma de Mallorca. Close enough? All right. Now, that would be in Spain, and this is basically where a school is established for navigators, for sailors to come back to bring their charts, to have their atlases of how everything's mapped out, and basically to map the ocean ways of which they were traveling. Interesting enough, a lot of the people who were working there, who were working here, were Jewish experts in map making, cartography. And they were able to produce the Catalan Atlas of 1375. The Catalan Atlas of 1375, which was basically like an atlas of all the places in the world they could travel by ship. So if you were a young sailor, it was your way to learn how to travel. Well, what would you have to know about besides, which direction to go? And remember, at this time, was there a world map like this?
No.
No, because people hadn't been all over the world yet. So this is forming, which would become like the first maps of the world. We take it for granted you could just have a map like this. But it wouldn't have existed back in the day. All right, my recording's about to be done.